Blue Beetle is here. He is blue and he is a beetle, hence the name. The latest DC Studios extravaganza. They're trying to make it happen, right? The big, fun, family-friendly adventure. Maybe this is it. Who knows? Tim Grierson's here to help me talk about this movie, El Escarabajo Azul. Tim, what's it about?
I'm not going to do any Spanish. My Spanish is not as good as Christie's.
He has to choose you. So how do we get it to unchoose me?
This is, as Christy, as you said, it's the most recent addition to the DC Extended Universe canon, I guess. It's the first time we've met Blue Beetle. He's never been in any of the other movies. He is played by Xolo Maridueña. And when we first meet him, he plays a character named Jaime. Jaime has just returned home after going to college. He's graduated pre-law. He's with his sort of wacky, eccentric family. Includes such cast members as George Lopez, who kind of plays George Lopez, and his beard. He has an amazing beard in this movie. And it's not CGI, it's a real beard. He's back home with his family, and he's trying to find work. His family is working class, and they're trying to kind of pull themselves out of their working class lives. And to kind of condense a lot of things that happen, a blue scarab comes into his life. Turns out it's from another planet. It's a blue scarab about this size. And after he's told, don't open this box that has the blue scarab in it, like all good movie characters, actually it's not him. It's his darn family who are too nosy. They open the box. They start playing with the blue scarab. It comes to life. It essentially chooses Jaime. And because this is a family-friendly podcast, I'm not going to say how the blue scarab enters Jaime's body, but he basically bonds, merges with the scarab, and becomes the Blue Beetle. He didn't choose this. He didn't want this, but now he is the Blue Beetle. He is going to eventually do battle with a woman named Victoria, played by Susan Sarandon. She is also now part of the DC Extended Universe. She wants the Blue Scarab for her own evil purposes because she is a bad, not good person. They will do battle. My spoiler is that I don't think this movie is going to do very well. Quality or not, I think unfortunately it is not going to do very well. And so DC's first sort of Latino-focused action movie, superhero movie, I think is going to kind of wither and die on the vine sort of box office-wise.
I agree with you, and I'm kind of bummed about that because this movie is really fun. And I went to a matinee in my neighborhood yesterday, and there were like 6 people there. Right? It's like for the opening of a big family-friendly movie, like there's not a whole lot else like it in theaters right now that everyone can go and see. And I was shocked that there weren't a lot of people there and kind of bummed. It's getting pretty good reviews, I guess, and it's really, really fun. Like I think that the theme of family is so relatable, and yet this particular family is so specific in the way that they relate to each other, in the cultural touchstones. Pretty much everyone involved with this is Mexican or Mexican American, and so you have very specific references to like 1970s Mexican TV shows and theme songs and the food. And so culturally, it's really specific. But the thing that makes this different from a lot of the big, shiny, noisy spectacles is that family element, is how they support each other and tool on each other and give each other a hard time. And that feels rich and real. And that buoys this film. And I think it makes it different from everything else, different from other things in the DC universe for sure, and different from a lot of big superhero movies. Like I had never heard of Blue Beetle. Had you?
I was not familiar with Blue Beetle. No, this is my first time. And I have to say that in terms of that low turnout you had at your screening, I have seen the trailer. I don't normally watch trailers, but I'd seen the trailer in the theater a couple of weeks ago, and just the lack of response from the audience. It's a pretty generic trailer, and I think that also kind of hurts the movie. I think Warner Bros. Doesn't know how to exactly sell this movie, so I was not familiar with Blue Beetle going into it, and I also love the experience. It happens for me in Blue Beetle. I saw it at a press screening, and there were people in the audience who were laughing at references that I was not aware were references.
Right.
There are specific references to Latino culture
Right.
where I could hear other people laughing because they got the joke. And I love when that happens. So I think, oh, this is a movie that is talking past me in certain ways, but other audience members are going to totally appreciate the things. And so I did sort of the deep dive afterwards to kind of learn about some of that stuff.
Yeah.
The family stuff, I think, is totally correct. I totally agree with you, Christy. I mean, in the era of like Fast and Furious movies where it's become a joke now, like those movies are about family.
Hashtag family.
Hashtag family. Yes. My apologies to the hashtag community that I did not do hashtag family. I think it's actually really refreshing to have a movie where it's, like I said, it's sort of a wild, raucous, somewhat dysfunctional, kind of quirky family, but you do really come to like all of the people in the family and you feel the sense of a genuine family.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the ways I knew this movie was working is I actually found myself maybe 2/3 of the way through the movie just thinking, I just like these people.
Right.
I think that there's certain elements of the movie that are sort of generic in terms of superhero stuff. This is the umpteenth film also where a regular guy becomes a superhero and he didn't want to be a superhero and he's kind of confused by the whole superhero thing and he has to reference a more famous superhero so that we know as an audience he knows he's not as great as Superman or whatever.
Right.
That more generic stuff in the movie is the least interesting. What's interesting is Jaime with his family, and also I will say just there's actually just like some really like smart stuff going on in terms of the community where they live. They're in like the more working class neighborhood, but there's a much more kind of beautiful, elegant, like super fancy, high rise filled city nearby them. And they can't afford to live there. And they make jokes and comments about gentrification and about, oh, eventually people will, richer people will move into our area too and then kick us out. Mm-hmm. There's this actual idea of like economic inequality that's going on in the film. And it also like relates to the Susan Sarandon character where she is this well-to-do, villainess who wants the scarab for her own purposes. And you get this sense of like class differences. And so there's actually this battle, not just between good and evil in the movie, but also like a little bit of class warfare that's going on. And that feels different than I would say other sort of, whether it's DC or Marvel, superhero underdog stories. Like they feel legitimately like underdogs because of their economic situation. And that made them more emotional and more relatable in certain ways than just here's another guy who gets to become a superhero.
But it's not heavy-handed, I don't think. I think it's
I don't think so.
Woven into who they are and how they live their lives. And like they don't necessarily want to go live in the shiny area. They want to be where they are and not be encroached upon by the evil corporations. They want to enjoy their life and their community. And it's a really great cast that like infuses that place with life and a vivid sense of place. Like Adriana Barraza is great in this as the grandma. I really enjoyed Belissa Escobedo as his younger sister. She's a total smartass and they have great chemistry. So it's a lovely cast that like really makes this place feel real. I agree with you on all of that. Yeah. And then like the superhero like learning the powers montage, like it's amusing, it's funny. I guess everyone has to have it. Like it's just de rigueur for a superhero origin story. So he goes through all that. But the stuff where it's like people flying through the air and like one is all lit up red and one's all lit up blue and they're like pew 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 and like hitting each other, like that to me is super boring. Like that's just bland and noisy and it can just be done now so that we can get to the part where they're all back together and giving each other a hard time again. So
yeah, I mean for me, Susan Sarandon I think is just an okay bad gal in this movie. I don't think she's super interesting. Her evil henchman I think is much better. And there's actually, I don't want to spoil anything,
right?
But there's an emotional thing during the pew pew part where they're saying this issue much more emotional, I found, than I normally do in the battle of lasers coming from hands or whatever happens kind of at the end of this movie. It actually is more emotional and it actually did kind of affect me in a way that these movies don't. I mean, in terms of who is Blue Beetle probably most like? Probably Iron Man, because he has this suit and there's something inside the suit that communicates with him.
Right.
And,
voiced by Becky G.
Yes, that's right. And that's played out in a certain way. We've seen that a lot. But even that has a couple nice wrinkles. I mean, I think what is funny is I try not to go into these types of, or any type of movie with expectations. I just go in as neutral as possible. But I think it's fair to say that because Warner Brothers screened it so late, and because it's playing so deep into August, I think there's a general assumption that maybe the movie is not very good. Also, the fact that the DC universe is kind of moving on now past these movies, past The Flash and like this, that maybe there's not going to be a future for Blue Beetle. That being said, I don't want to overrate the movie because I think it is sort of like second tier kind of DC, but it's charming and it's funny. And something that's been said a lot, which I think is very true about Blue Beetle, it's got nice low stakes. The universe is not imperiled. The world domination is not what's going on. It's really just about this family stopping this mean lady. And sometimes I really appreciate when a movie just has those like smaller stakes, because it can also be exhausting. Oh no, can Blue Beetle save Earth from the big beam from the sky that's going to destroy everything? That doesn't really happen in this movie. And that modesty, I think, also works to the movie's advantage without it being this like jokey extravaganza of like, hey, we're not as cool as Superman or Batman. It doesn't do that either. It's not great, but it's good. And when it doesn't do well, I'm going to be kind of sad because this is actually one of the good recent DC movies and people are going to miss it.
So what's your number then?
I'm going to give it a 6.5.
Okay. I will say 7.2. I had more fun than that. And I really like Xolo Maridueña's performance. I thought he was super charismatic and really likable. And this is his first big film role. And I thought he did great in a very demanding role physically and emotionally and having to carry all of that. So I thought he did a good job. And Angel Manuel Soto is Puerto Rican and brings like verve to it, specificity to it, but also is saddled with the big noisy stuff. So yes, Blue Beetle is in theaters. If you've not subscribed yet, we'd love to have you. Thanks for hanging out with us, Tim. Thanks for hanging out with us, folks. We'll see you soon.